Uh, Welcome everybody to the January 2024 meeting of the Whatcom County Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force. My name is Stephen Gockley. I'm co-chair one last time with my friend and partner, Jack Hovenier. We begin with the land acknowledgement statement. Before we begin, we acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional and unceded territory of the Lummi, Nooksack, Samish, and Semiahmoo people who have cared for and tended this land since time immemorial. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We pay respect to their elders, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events. I'll call this meeting to order and start by turning it over to Jack for some welcomes and introductions.
Great, thank you. My name is Jack Hovenier, co-chair of the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force. I wanted to start with, we have some new permanent members on the task force I want to acknowledge. Let me start with, I know it's Sheriff Tanks. I probably doesn't, I don't think we're going to call him Sheriff Tank, but Sheriff Tanksley would probably be the appropriate name for Tank. He's not a new face to people on the task force, but he is new as a permanent member of the task force, serving, of course, for the sheriff. Congratulations. Congratulations to that. Then we have the Ferndale Chief of Police, Kevin Turner, who is filling the role that Tank used to fill. Kevin, you want to say hello?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Yep, Chief Kevin Turner with Ferndale Police. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate having you. Tank, I wasn't trying to not call on you. Would you like to say, I know you're not a new face, but would you like to say anything?
Well, sure. Just thanks for all the support. When I was in Kevin's position, Chief Turner's position, and in this new position, I look forward to doing all I can from the sheriff's office. And I mean, it's really exciting the next few years what this committee is going to do. So I'm looking forward to that.
Great. Well, it's a pleasure having you. We also have, I think, a couple other people will be new, including the new Bellingham mayor, someone from likely the tribes, as well as some other positions. And I think I'm thinking, Stephen, it's probably more appropriate those individuals can be introduced when they're here. And of course, the minutes of the task force or the roster of permanent members will reflect, if anyone's wondering who is who, that will be reflected, I believe, in, I don't know if it's actually the minutes, but there is a roster that Jill keeps of who the task force members are. Jill, is there anything else you think I need to add regarding that I'm omitting by mistake?
Well, not that I can think of. Thank you. Cool.
All right. All right. And with that, we've got a little bit of a challenge with the agenda. We were told this morning, Councilman Buchanan is running just a little bit late. And so one of the items, the main items for discussion today is one he's going to be presenting on. Also, Deputy Executive Schroeder is going to be doing another item. Because neither of them are here, I think the logical way to proceed, Stephen, would you recommend, I'm not sure who's doing the legislative session priorities, but I'm assuming we probably want Barry and Tyler for that. So I'm thinking we just jump to committee updates.
Excuse me, Jack and Stephen, just to let you know, Kayla is here now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I see Kayla, and I think we could go ahead with her piece.
Thanks,
Okay.
Stephen.
And that.
Oh, I was going to say Tyler's on his way to join as well.
Okay, cool. Then let's go ahead and proceed with that. Okay, and that being for that would be item number 3 if you're following the agenda, which is the Justice Project Finance Advisory Board. And just for the benefit of anyone who may not be aware, These items we're discussing are part of the ordinance that was passed by the voters in November relating to the revenue that will help support the improvements we're hoping to see to the criminal justice system, including development of a new main jail. And these committees are outlined, I believe, if memory serves, in that ordinance. And I see a hand from Whatcom County Executive's Office.
Oh, that may be Tyler. If I could interject, Kayla
Yep.
is handling the legislative part, item number 4.
Oh, I misunderstood. Okay, cool. Thank you for clarifying that. I did not know that. So let's, and you're doing that, aren't you, Stephen, on the agenda today?
Yeah, I mean, I'm introducing.
Great.
Who needs.
Perfect. I'm going to turn it over to you and put my speaker on mute. Okay, great.
So Kayla, let's go to your item, whatever update you can provide on whatever's happened so far with the legislative session. Tyler, welcome. And Kayla, you call in Tyler for back up to the extent you feel that's needed.
That sounds good. Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Jack. Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you. So legislative session is underway. We've had several conversations with groups of you over the last months about priorities. Our main behavioral health priority this session is some gap funding for the 23-hour crisis relief center. So we will be submitting a capital budget request for that and have been in conversation with Representative Rule around sponsoring that. I think it's going to be tough to get the full 2.3 million that we're asking for, but we're working to find money other places as well. We're sort of combing through the governor's budget to see if there's any sort of set asides for grant programs for this type of facility. And then also we'll be speaking with the federal delegation and community partners. So if anyone on the call is sort of more interested in the fundraising effort associated with that facility, I'd be really glad to talk to you. On the operating side, we had talked with this group around submitting as a pilot site for a prosecutorial diversion program through DSHS. It looks like that was not ultimately included in the governor's budget, that program expansion, but there still is a potential opportunity through DSHS using existing agency funding to pursue a project like that. So Perry is coordinating closely with them, and if we need to do any sort of agency advocacy, that will certainly be on our list. That continues to be a high priority for us. The Medicaid waiver, which was also a big priority in the justice plan, is in the governor's budget after being incorporated into the HCA decision package. And so we don't expect any problems with that this year. The legislature is just the governor's just asking the legislature for a small amount of implementation funding as well as clarity on moving forward with the 90-day waiver. Our delegation's firmly in support. So we're enthused there, and our understanding is the governor's budget also has a small amount of sort of technical assistance implementation funding. So we're continuing to track that and seeing what we can do to get some money here sooner rather than later to start preparing for implementation as we build the new justice facilities. On the policy side related to behavioral health, we haven't yet heard of any major behavioral health legislation being introduced this session, but we know Snohomish County has some language on their agenda around expansion of secure detox beds, as well as involuntary detention for people with substance use disorder. So strengthening Ricky's Law and ITA stuff around substance use. So we're tracking that closely and waiting to see if any legislation is going to be introduced. And then there's a lot of behavioral health bills just sort of related to bolstering the workforce and other things in line with the IPRTF priorities that we are tracking and happy to support down in Olympia. But not a lot of updates, and I expect next month we'll have a lot more to share than I do today, but happy to answer questions, or if others have heard of priority bills that they want to bring to the group's attention, would love to hear about those.
Kayla, for Chief Turner's benefit and just to backfill the recollections of other members, can you describe, when you refer to the Medicaid waiver bill, can you describe what that entails and the.
Yeah. So the Medicaid waiver right now, the federal government basically turns Medicaid off when someone enters a jail or prison. It's called the Medicaid inmate exclusion rule. There's work at the federal level to try to undo that long-standing policy, but in the meantime, states are working on waivers through the Center for Medicaid and Medicare and Medicaid services to essentially have a workaround where, 30 days or 90 days prior to release, you can get Medicaid turned back on. This would fund services, behavioral health services and reentry services in county jails, allow the county to have significant cost savings in the behavioral health fund, as well as expand services to folks who certainly need them. So we're really tracking closely Washington State's effort to submit and implement one of these waivers. Is that what you were looking for, Stephen?
Yes, that's great. And Chief Turner, feel free to throw in any questions you have in some of these fields that must strike you as a little bit new, but.
You bet. Thank you.
Yeah. Kayla, just back on the 23-hour crisis center, is that a zero-sum game? It's either zero or the funding we ask? Do we have any?
No, I think that it's sort of like gradations up to the amount we ask for. So I think we're probably likely to get less than the amount we ask for, but that doesn't mean we're going to get nothing.
And when do we have a sense of learning that? And when do we have a sense of getting some responses from some of the other inquiries you're making?
So we won't know if we're getting the money basically till the end of session. We'll have a sense once the House capital budget is released, whether we think it's likely.
Great.
But short session, so everything should wrap up pretty soon.
Yeah. Well, I don't see other hands. Are there other questions for Kayla on legislative stuff? Tyler or Executive Sadhu, do you have anything you want to add on legislation?
No, not at this time. I think we would rather hear more from everybody else.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kayla. I appreciate your report. Jack, I'll turn it back to you. I think we can go back to item number 3.
Sure. Okay. Great. Thank you. All right. We are, I'm going to turn this over now to Tyler Schroeder to talk about the Justice Project Finance Advisory Board. And that's item 3 on your agenda. And Tyler, it is all yours.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Thanks, Steve. Hello, task force. Hope everyone's doing well. Nice to be here today. Give a little update on the Finance Advisory Board. So as the task force remembers, and as County Council worked through the public safety tax ordinance that placed the tax onto the ballot last year, there was a lot of discussion about oversight and ensuring a transparent process from a couple of different standpoints. And during that conversation, the council developed kind of 2 different boards. One was the Finance Advisory Board, which was requesting the executive to include a long-term agreement with the Whatcom County cities to provide financial oversight of the funds collected from the sales tax and make recommendations on the finance and operations of the jail, behavioral health, and supportive housing facilities and services, and align that with a population health report on public health and safety. So the Finance and Advisory Board is intended to be made up of the county executive, 1 county council member, the county sheriff, the mayor of Bellingham, 1 Bellingham city council member, 1 elected representative from the remaining cities within the county, 2 elected representatives from federally recognized tribes within Whatcom County, 1 municipal law enforcement representative, the chair or chairs of the Incarceration Prevention Reduction Task Force and Law and Justice Council, 1 individual with lived experience in the criminal justice system, and 1 representative from the behavioral health system. As always, this board will be subject to the Open Public Meetings Act. So that board was created by the county council and is intended to have oversight in regards to the public safety tax commitments in the ordinance that was passed last July. And then also some recommendations and oversight, specifically kind of as I envision on the facilities associated with the public safety tax. So that would include the development of the finance agreements for the cities and the county in the share of public safety tax for the first up to 6 years, to be able to bond for the jail and behavioral health center facility, while also ensuring that the 50-50 split between the facility cost and the other items in the justice implementation plan are accomplished. So tracking those items and ensuring that the monies are being spent as expected in the implementation plan, and understanding the bond capacity, the bond amounts, and the sharing and revenues upfront between the city and the county to pay down those amounts so that we can get as much money out into the community for behavioral health purposes and other purposes that are outlined in the justice plan after the public health and safety facility, the jail and behavioral health center has been constructed and a bond amount has been identified. So I have met with a couple of representatives from the cities and anticipate to do more of that, and then bring forward an ordinance to council for council consideration of the next steps to seat the Finance and Operations Board. That has not happened, but we do anticipate that council conversation to happen in the next month or two. And likely the first item that would be worked on is that interlocal agreement between the cities and the counties for the upfront sharing of public safety revenue tax. This Finance and Advisory Board is one of two boards that were anticipated. The second board or committee that was anticipated is the JPOP, the Justice Project Oversight and Planning Committee. And I think later on this agenda or in the near future, the task force will be talking through the JPOP representation and how it aligns with the task force and understands those roles for the JPOP. I just wanted to recognize that it is a separate committee than the JPOP. And the council was really interested in having both of the committees, one from the Finance and Operations Board, and then the JPOP on more of the oversight and planning to ensure that the items in the justice plan are carried out. Barry, I see your hands raised. Do you have something on this topic? Oh.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I did. I just wanted to add the council has looked at this at our last meeting, actually, and we appointed the council rep, and that was me. So the council hasn't seen the ordinance yet that's going to totally seat it, but the council is engaged in the process. So that's where we are.
Thanks for the reminder.
Mike?
Yeah, thanks for that report, Deputy Executive Schroeder. I'm curious how you or maybe Councilmember Buchanan or anybody else that wants to speak to this. I hear good oversight and some methodology, and I'm really appreciative of that board being created that'll look at the finances and the interlocal pieces. I am thinking about really more once the jail is constructed, right? Once we have a new facility. What's a good way for the community involved? What does ongoing oversight of jail operations look like? In the past, obviously, with our previous facility and the role of this committee, it's been much more, light, obviously, right? We will ask for data and it's very of great import to this particular task force, and yet we have no direct oversight over that jail. I'm not saying that we need it, but I am curious how you all envision, or maybe executives to do, how you all envision ongoing oversight once we do have a new jail facility, and might we do something different than how we have in the past?
Let me start and Tyler, please jump in. Our vision is, and of course, council makes more decisions on this than us as executive. And we have that supervision no matter what, because it's one of our cost center, put it this way, a substantial cost center. So we have to monitor from that perspective. But I think that as this legislation was getting developed, ballot measure, we looked at two angles. One is purely financial, that the operations monies, because I think the fear was that the previous jail was let down, blah, 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 and everything else we all have heard, right? Because without any substantial data or anything, claims get made, and then public takes that into consideration in their minds. I think that we want to establish a regular reporting system so that there is the historical facts of the jail administration from the perspective of financial, its maintenance, its operations, how and what needs are being met, or what needs are given to the administration or the council from the sheriff's office, what is missing, what is needed. So it will establish a credible periodic system of reporting back and forth, and both sheriff's office and executive's office will be responsible to report to the council. So that's one thing I see from the financial perspective. So everything is up and transparent for everybody. Now, the JPOP is more of a oversight from the social perspective, community perspective. How are people treated? Is the jail is providing the services which were promised? How they are being provided? The data on the racial equity, data on the other equity, all those things which have been brought to us over 2 years as Stakeholder Advisory Committee, IPRTF, all this, that probably would fall under that body to keep up, and again, more systemic, more periodic reporting. So that's how I perceive it, and I would welcome anybody else to.
Yeah, just to build off of that, and Sheriff Tank, I'd love to get your thoughts and perspective on it as well.
Absolutely. So when we think of oversight, it's actually different parts of the onion that we have to have oversight over. So of course you're going to have your financial aspect, but also oversight over the operations. And right now the state is looking at the policies and the procedures and the administration of county jails throughout the state. In fact, they just started a new committee to take a look at that. But one thing that we could do is, when we look at how we construct the jail, and we look at the operations, and we look at how much behavior care that we have, and when we look at the training potential that we have for people that are incarcerated, what I envision having the correctional facility accredited. So when you have an accredited facility, then most often you're looking at the best practices in the nation for those facilities. So part of that oversight should be accreditation.
Chief Tanksley, just to clarify, so I think what you're saying is one way to provide what Mike's asking for the community of the council is to give an ongoing report on where we're at with our accreditation. Are we in compliance? If we're not, where are we adjusting? So you have this external national best practice metric that we're using as one of the main standards to report.
Absolutely. And really, to be specific, so you have accreditation with operations, and then you also have a different accreditation for the medical services that you provide. So it's a multi-layer approach, but being accredited and trying to get the accreditation even now would prepare us for when the new facility is built.
I mean, obviously you've got a great deal of autonomy but it's my last meeting, so I'll interject a few opinions. I think that seems like a really wise path, because then you've got this external metric that becomes part of what you report to the county rather than one we devise ourselves that can be part of the overall reporting and accountability. It seems seems like a prudent course.
Thank you.
I think one other component, and Mike, one part of the Finance and Operations Board and the interlocal agreements that we are all working on is, for really the first time, it's a partnership with the cities and the county to construct the new facility. And so, in that partnership also becomes some oversight, and it's not to recognize any taking away from the sheriff's actual responsibility by RCW that Tank just got done kind of recognizing. But the anticipation is that the interlocal and the board will continue and move on beyond just the construction and be able to provide some input and some open conversation in regards to the facility, how it implements the justice plan recommendations, how the accreditation process that Sheriff Tank just recognized allows for the community to understand the services that are being provided, and will likely last the term of this agreement, which may be the 30 years in regards to the bond. So I do think that there will be more of a conversation of how it's operated and what facility reduction in service and party use and how the treatment facility is being utilized, and some of the other anticipated functions associated with it. So we're still working through those details, but every time I've had conversations with the cities and anticipated that agreement, that board would continue beyond just the construction.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you for clarifying. It's neat to see how this is kind of evolving and moving along and creating, I'll call them permanent stakeholders invested in the resource they need. That sounds great. Stephen, your hand is up.
Oh, could I follow up really quick, Jack? Just very briefly. Okay. Deputy Executive Schroeder, thanks for mentioning that. And I think you're getting at one of the things that wasn't really clear was that, that JPOP or whatever oversight groups would persist beyond the implementation, I mean, the creation of the jail. So really pleased to hear that. I think that could be a good methodology. And I just want to call out and just really appreciate what Sheriff Tanksley has told us too about oversight. Many communities use civilian oversight, or there's different ways, right, that to build that trust, to have the community get the information they need about how our justice facilities are run. And Sheriff Tanksley, I get that it's an amazing concept. It's an amazing idea. I think it would be very helpful for those that would want to read such a terse report. There will be lots of information, and I think you're getting at the transparency that I was really kind of hinting at. So thank you all three for that really good answer, and appreciate that. Off to you, Stephen.
Yeah, I just wanted to add for emphasis, it's really easy. It happened in the campaign, and it's happening a little bit now in this discussion. It's really easy to be drawn to the magnetism of the size of the jail as part of this, but we're really implementing, both in the implementation plan and the ordinance, we're implementing 15 projects, of which the jail is one. And so the Financial Advisory Board, the JPOP, all of the community oversight are to the totality of that very huge development project. It's not just the jail, it's the 23-hour center, it's the behavioral care center, it's community behavioral health services. So that will be within the scope of the work, I believe. Tyler, correct me if you think otherwise, of the Financial Advisory Board and the JPOP. And the jail is obviously a central and very large part of that, but it's not the only part of it.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Are there other questions, comments, anything more to clarify this very early state of this? One question for you, Tyler. I know you said it, or maybe it's for Barry, that it's probably a few months. Are you anticipating, for example, this committee meeting before maybe June of this year? Or are we looking at, many months, or just maybe just some rough timeline of when you think you might have that first meeting?
Yeah, I think it will be prior to June. At the first council meeting in January, the council has passed an ordinance that was submitted to Department of Revenue. And that state department is what actually starts to collect the public safety tax. That had to be submitted prior to 75 days to the first end of the quarter, which is April, so that it can start collecting in April. And which then means the cities and the county would start collecting the public safety tax in June or July of this year. And so the agreement that's being worked on is hoping the anticipated timeline is to pass that by council prior to June of this year. And it's anticipated that the Finance and Operation Board would be up and running and at least have some ability to provide some input onto that document prior to council passing it.
Thanks. And I mean, I know that can be subject to change, but some idea of that's great to know. And did you say then that the revenue would likely be starting to be added to local sales tax in June or July then probably?
Yeah, it's likely that it'll be started to add to local sales tax in April. And
Okay.
then it's collected 3 months later, just the way that
Oh,
the state
okay.
and county allocations happen.
Okay, thank you. Any
So
other questions?
You as a buyer will see it in April, and the county and cities would see the actual collection by June.
Oh, you mean they get the money back from the state?
That's right.
Okay, that makes more sense. And like what they're collecting it, the state gets a 3-month like bonus.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. They return it 90 days later. Got it. Okay. All right. Anyone else on this topic? Thanks so much for clarifying that and adding that information. And I'm sure this will likely be on future agendas with updates of where this is going. All right, Stephen, I'm going to turn it over to you for, I think we're going to item 3.
Yes, thank you, Jack. We're gonna back up in the agenda to item number 2. This is facilitated by Councilmember Buchanan, and it involves reviewing the ordinance for what we've been talking about, and the formation within the task force of what we lovingly call the JPOP, the Justice Project Oversight and Planning Committee. And so Barry, I'll give it to you. I also will flag for you that there's a nice chart in there that will probably be the focus of some of the discussion that Jill Nixon developed for the steering committee and then for the development of JPOP. Barry, take it away.
Thanks, Stephen. Just a one production note for you. Your microphone is very low compared to everyone else. I have to keep turning you up. Anyway.
I'm really sorry. I turned it up because I've had that problem for months now. And
okay.
I'm sorry.
No problem. Hey, welcome everybody. Sorry I'm late. We had the washing machine didn't survive the cold snap and we had one delivered this morning. So I had to let the guys in and let them get it connected. So I appreciate you accommodating the agenda switch. Anyway, the JPOP, the steering committee met, I can't think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago. And this was the main, almost sole topic of our discussion was on the JPOP. And kind of where we started was with the matrix that Jill has created that's in your packet. What we wanted to do is look through the ordinance and look at what the ordinance called out for membership. And then we looked at the task force to see, what kind of overlap. So you'll see that in the packet. There's a matrix that Jill developed. Thank you, Jill, for that. And what the steering committee really came up with is nothing new that really hasn't been talked about before. And that would be that the JPOP would become a subcommittee of the IPTRF. That I think has been the understanding all along. That's kind of, the council will be talking about this tomorrow in our criminal justice and public safety committee meeting to start finalizing the process on how we're going to get this created. But I want to back up a little bit and go kind of continue on the discussion a little bit about the oversight responsibilities of the JPOP. The JPOP is really charged with monitoring the progress of the implementation plan. That's really the big job making sure that all those projects are on track and that we are working with the executive's office. We're working with Tank and his crew to make sure that those projects are moving forward. And then we have some reporting requirements that the ordinance has called out. There's a report every 2 years. There's also information that will be included in the task force annual report. We would do a segment, the JPOP would submit a segment on the progress for that year. And then there's a 5-year window for actually making revisions to the implementation plan. So after 5 years, the task force through the JPOP can recommend any revisions to the implementation plan. The council will be doing the appointing. The council is very familiar with that kind of process. It would be difficult for this group, I think, to do that. And it's the council's responsibility. So ultimately it is a responsibility. So that will be something that'll be on a future agenda. We won't be doing that tomorrow, but timeline, I think the JPOP will probably be established by early second quarter, April. I'm just kind of, my gut tells me maybe even sooner, maybe March, but we want to get that up and running as soon as possible to start talking about developing the charter. That's another charge that we have for the JPOP, and that is to create a charter for itself and kind of some sort of a process to how they do their work. So Stephen, Jack, Jill, Tyler, have I missed anything? We're still a bit a ways from doing the appointments, like I said, but I think we'll nail down a process tomorrow. Questions? Sapal.
Yeah, I think, Barry, it will be good if you or the council or as the chair council and as IPRTF, we create a smaller memo and send it around to people, and because people have forgotten and there are too many details and everybody doesn't go into the whole agreement plan and read it. So it'll be nice if you can summarize some of the major points of JPOP and the whole implementation plan and tasks for this 2024, something like that, what we plan to do. I think that will be very helpful.
That's what I had planned to do after the council establishes the process. I was going to do a 1-pager and send out to this group and other interested parties. So I agree with you, Sapal. It's a good idea.
Barry, could you take a minute and walk through the crosswalk chart that Jill did? Because Jill's work raises some questions that need to be decided. So it wasn't clear to me from your description of the process how or when those questions about membership. For instance, I'm just glancing at it. There's one position that she asked, what's the difference between this subject matter expert behavioral health person being different from a SUD treatment provider. So there are some questions that need to be dealt with, and I'm not sure where in the process that would happen.
I think what I wanted to do today, Stephen, is maybe have Jill just walk us through this real quick since she created it. And if there's any questions that arise that we could deal with today, we could discuss that. So Jill, are you prepared to walk through and summarize this?
Yeah, I can do that. Let me screen share here right quick.
While you're doing that, I'll call on Arlene.
Well, the difference between SUD counselor and a mental health counselor is actually very large. They are not the same task, although there are elements of one profession in the other, so that they are different.
Arlene, I misspoke, and you can see it now that Jill has it up here. It's a recovery subject matter expert, not a behavioral health expert. And so there is a little bit of similarity, more similarity between a recovery subject expert, at least in Jill's mind.
Well, that's true. Yes.
Thank you, Stephen. And just so everyone is aware, this is the same list that went before the steering committee a couple of weeks ago. And Perry addressed some of these questions. Perry, do you want to talk again to the full task force about your descriptions of both the recovery subject matter expert and the reentry specialist positions that were questioned during the steering committee?
Sure. Just a couple of thoughts about this in terms of oversight, idea development and so forth. I very much agree with Ms. Feld that there's certainly a difference between a mental health professional and a substance use disorder professional, just in terms of certification and area of expertise. There are obviously individuals that are certified for both. And so a couple of the points that I offered up was that I think that it will be important to have a recovery oriented specialist, individual as a part of JPOP, particularly related to the behavioral health services discussion and the components, of course, of the SAC and what's been discussed of implementation of behavioral health services within the jail setting. And the other thing that I offered up was I just was sort of wrestling a little bit when we were talking about reentry specialists, that I think that is absolutely an important component in consideration of individuals that are the entity that is currently providing the jail behavioral health services, that we might want to discuss further if it were a provider that was actually providing the services, if you will. I don't know if I can get my head fully around it, but the possibility in terms of sort of a dual relationship or conflict of interest, I'm not sure exactly which, but I was just wanting to point that out, that it could be, oh, well, here's the person that, would really, be dialed in and know. And at the same time, there may be another factor of a limited willingness to, speak candidly, because of the relational component. So those were the two pieces that I, wanted to offer up. From being involved in this process with the SAC group and, and other components of it, I certainly feel strongly that a representative of the county that has this knowledge and can continue to advocate for those very important services as this project develops is horrendously important, to not lose sight, of that piece. And in my opinion, and historic experience, I have found that when individuals are unfortunately incarcerated, it absolutely creates a opportunity to work with individuals in a very unique motivational setting and experience for them, and can have dramatic effects on individuals' decision making and et cetera at the point of release from incarceration, et cetera. Again, unfortunate set of circumstances that the individual would come into contact with that kind of service, but nonetheless, a very much an opportunity for behavioral health specialists and substance use disorder professionals and et cetera. Way beyond my thought process is initiating services while incarcerated to then transition into the community, which enhances and increases the likelihood that an individual would continue to follow through. A lot of people honestly don't engage in behavioral health and or substance use disorder services because of fear and the unknown. And then once they don't engage and then possibly, are discharged and continue to actively use, the likelihood even drops further, in my experience. So hopefully I've addressed those pieces of just the thoughts in terms of our recommendations, the thought process around recovery subject matter expert and mental health, behavioral health entity. Thanks.
Thank you, Perry. Going back to this list here, I will say that this was created on request of the Justice Project planning team with the notion that is it possible for the IPRTF itself to serve the function of the JPOP? So I cross-referenced current IPRTF positions with those positions required by the JPOP in the ordinance. And that's what you see here on your screen. I understand that we've decided, or that you've decided, there seems to be a consensus instead to go ahead and move forward with creating a subcommittee. So I don't know that this cross-reference necessarily will be relevant, but here it is. And the JPOP requires several of the you can see here in blue, several of the current IPRTF members and others that are up here, you can see as well as here. So I think the decision is going to be which of the current IPRTF members will also sit on the JPOP, and then which position will we need to recruit for the council to appoint to fill it out. Barry?
Okay, thanks, Jill. Any questions on that kind of description? We wanted to get a good feeling to see what we had on board already in terms of meeting the requirements of the ordinance that creates the JPOP. So that was important work to do, and I think it's still going to be valuable for the council because there may be someone that applies for the JPOP that's on the task force, and the council will be able to see that through this work. So I think that's important. Anyway, anything else on JPOP? Is there anything else that needs clarifying before the council kind of digs into this tomorrow?
Barry, I hear that you're considering a separate application process for the JPOP. Is that correct? And when might that open up?
I think we would do the normal council appointment process, and Joe would post for those, and the council would decide that tomorrow when we would do that. I think it would be very soon.
Okay. Other questions for Barry? This is an important step in the implementation process and for task force involvement in this. So I think the other thing I'd direct your attention to is as well as the crosswalk chart that Jill did, she also did a really nice job of breaking out the responsibilities and duties, both in the plan and in the ordinance for the JPOP. And so those are the final couple pages in your packet. And I encourage people to take a look at those to really understand the functional work of the JPOP besides its composition.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Appreciate it. So we'll go back to the agenda, if I can find it here. And I believe we're at committee updates.
Committee reports, committee updates.
So we would start with the steering committee, which would be you again, Barry. I think you hinted that most of the steering committee report was what you just went over with the JPOP deliberations.
Yeah, that's kind of how this always ends up. Steering committee just is a summation of the agenda items that we are dealing with during the meeting. So yeah, that's correct, Stephen.
Okay. So then the Behavioral Health Committee, and that's Mike Parker and Dan Hamill. Dan is ill today and not able to attend. Mike, are you on for this?
You bet. I'm sure I'm happy to do that.
Thank
So
you.
the Behavioral Health Committee met just last week. Our primary agenda topic was none other than Perry Mowry talking to us about competency restoration. The Behavioral Health Subcommittee is particularly keenly interested in partnering with administration and with Whatcom Health and Human Services and with any new jail, to really see if we can get a program going that might either be a diversion program, outpatient competency restoration, any of those things in the gamut. I won't go into too much in depth because I will butcher it badly, but we really appreciated Perry sharing what the competency restoration group has been going. And just for this group that is not dead in the water, there are still possibilities for our community to lift up a program. And just for folks, very briefly, competency restoration has to deal with when folks encounter the criminal justice system and may or may not need evaluation to see if they're competent to be able to stand trial. And we have, as many people know, people languishing, really waiting in incarceration facilities, waiting for behavioral health evaluation and treatment. So it's a matter of great import for the Behavioral Health Committee. The other main topic for the Behavioral Health Subcommittee was looking ahead to 2024 and what items. We do this on an annual basis. We always go to our members and ask what is going to be most important. Obviously, continuing to monitor, follow a 23-hour facility was up there at the tops. And also looking and comparing against a letter that we had sent to the executive's office, I think in 2021. We did a brief review of that, thanks to Heather Flaherty, who brought that up, and looked and saw many of the items actually that we had recommended and that we were really behind, the county is doing and implementing. So there was just a recognition of some positive change in some areas, but obviously we have a lot more to do. At the next coming behavioral subcommittee, we will kind of finalize and come up with, if you will, our agenda topics for the year. And one of the things that the committee really wants to do, and it's kind of a value of the committee, it was proposed by my co-chair, council member Dan Hamill, was that we really get involved in action, and just kind of an acknowledgement that many of our meetings had been really update and information oriented, and we really want to shift in 2024 and be more action oriented. So there's a lot of meat happening in various different areas, from new jail facilities opening up, and the Behavioral Health Subcommittee wants to be active and involved and be activist as much as we can. That's it for now. Thanks, Stephen and Jack.
Thank you, Mike. And I'll attest to the fact that that was a rich discussion in the Behavioral Health Committee, and thank Perry for his connecting that to the competency restoration work. The next report is the Legal and Justice System Subcommittee, and that would be Raylene and Arlene.
Thank you, Stephen. That was a fairly short meeting. We kind of went through some of the changes, new people, changes in job titles, people that are going to other committees, and asking what people want to hear about. Introduced Stephanie Kraft, the new Superior Court Administrator, and we talked about the fact that she has a new person that actually just started today, Kelsey McDonald, under pretrial services. So she's walking around with Alan Epps today, learning the ropes, and we hopefully will hear more from them and how things are going in pretrial services in the future. And we had a little bit of an update from Maya about public defense, and from Eric Ritchie that things are looking a little bit better, in that there are applicants now for some of the vacant positions. So I think that summarizes it.
Questions for Raylene? I'm going to interject myself in this and ask for help if needed from Judge Freeman to just update you on the pretrial processes work group. Last meeting, you recall, the task force authorized us to send a letter to the state administrative office, the courts, to reconsider withdrawal of the services of our supporting data scientist, Dr. Andrew Peterson, who they had sort of reassigned away from working with our work group. We have not sent that letter. Subsequent communications with Dr. Peterson made clear, A, that that's probably not something they would consider anyway, and B, Dr. Peterson made a recommendation to someone that he encouraged us to contact that he had worked with who might take up some of that data analysis for us. So I think basically, and Judge Freeman helped me out here. I think we decided to pursue that avenue, and Judge Freeman and the executive's office, Tyler, you may want to weigh in on this as well, have been exploring that. In any event, I just wanted to let you know that the action you authorized has sort of been superseded by events, and we continue to pursue some support from a data scientist on this. And Judge Freeman, if you want to add anything to that, please feel free.
Just that the focus is going to be on the risk assessment tool and verifying that. That is what Dr. Peterson had suggested, an alternative person to do. I did, Stephen, have a couple of email exchanges recently with Dr. Peterson. We caught him during the holidays when he had been off. So I have had some updates. I'm just about to the point where I'm going to just hand that off probably to Tyler at this point, now that we've got some more direction as far as what the scope would be. He's confident that this other party would have the same access to the AOC data that he had. So I think we're moving forward on that.
Thank you. And part of the complication here is that this is a private vendor of services, so it would involve a contract, it would involve a commitment of money, and I think that's where the executive's office is getting involved. Tyler, anything you want to add here?
Nope, just continuing to work with the judge and see it kind of align a lot with the data needs that we talked about in the justice plan. And we've included a FTE for that in 2024. So we're working on that process. And then also any data needs that we see, we're going to be bringing it to council to accomplish that work. And this is just a piece of that puzzle.
Great. Thank you for weaving those pieces together. Raylene.
Thank you. Just to add, and hopefully this helps, I attended the Gender and Justice Commission on Friday, January 19th. And one of the speakers was Jennifer Romach, Professor Jennifer Romach with UW, along with Geraldine Germain. And they were discussing Washington POP, or WASH POP as they discussed it, for data efforts in the state in collaboration with the courts and equity and racial injustices. And it's a program that they're currently working on. I can get their information and share that with the exec's office, as well as steering committee and Judge Freeman. They might be beneficial as we continue our data efforts.
Great. Thank you for connecting those dots, Raylene.
Yeah.
Anything else on the Legal and Justice Systems Subcommittee or the Pretrial Processes Work Group? Okay. Jack, you want to finish it up?
Sure. Oh, we didn't have them on here. We didn't have crisis stable. Perfect. I was waiting for Perry, but it's not, we didn't have a meeting, so we're good. Yeah, that's later. Perry, you want to say anything, Perry? Go right ahead.
Sure. Thank you. We originally had the Crisis Stabilization Facility Subcommittee meeting. It's a quarterly meeting, and it was scheduled for the 18th of January. And I had a conflict with my schedule in relation to working with some community partners. And so Jill, thank you so much. Jill reached out and reworked that for our meeting to be scheduled on the 15th of February, right after Valentine's Day. That way you'll remember. And I'll be providing information, utilization of beds in 2023, also the goals, working pretty closely with the providers at this point. So a number of pieces. So by all means, I hope that all folks will attend and have lots of questions.
Thank you, Perry. All right, I think we are at other business. Looks like we'll probably be ending a little early today, which usually is not a problem for folks. Does anybody have other business that we're not aware of? Judge Freeman.
I just wanted to respond to the restoration issue that came up earlier. I think it's important just to keep the members here informed of what we're looking at in real time. And I did want to say that it appears to me that in the last couple of months, we've had a significant improvement when it comes to restoration services and timelines. So the last couple of weeks, we're down to under a month as far as a delay. And I think last summer we were running at like 6 months. So,
wow. That's great news. Thank you for sharing that. Perry?
Judge Freeman, can I just clarify a little bit? Are we talking about evaluations or those individuals being placed in services? Thank you.
placed in services.
Thank you so much.
But the last week I had the average. Now, this isn't every case. Some are more difficult than others, but I think out of the 3 I saw, we had 2 at 22 days and 1 at 29.
And Judge Freeman, this may be beyond the scope of what you were attesting to in terms of backlog. We were out, the committee was also informed that there's quite a backlog of people that were waiting for some time. Do you know, is that also considerably different?
This is purely anecdotal, keep in mind, but I think the evaluation time period has not improved any. In fact, I would say that we're still running about 2 weeks for evaluation. It's the restoration period. And once we've signed those orders, we can't necessarily track it after that. We have review periods of when somebody gets in. But what I can track, and that's the response from DSHS, and what I'm seeing as far as responses in the last few weeks, significantly lower. So their projections have gone from 90, 180 days to 22, 29. So I would assume that backlog has also been dealt with, given that these are newer evaluations that are moving forward with restoration services now.
Right, at a more normal time frame. Well, thank you for that. That's a piece of good news that we could use. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Raylene.
On a side note, the DV advocate reached out to me. I shared that with Perry. There was somebody that was ordered to have restoration done that was out of custody from that county, but was actually in custody in our county. The length of time for somebody to be restored when they're out of custody is a lot longer than when somebody is in custody. So trying to make sure that we can connect those individuals when they've been deemed in need of restoration in one county and in custody in another county is definitely something we need to try to work on.
Thank you, Raylene. And Maya?
Yeah, I'm just curious where those beds are coming from. So I think we have to imagine that they are releasing a lot of folks who are civilly committed. And I don't know how thoughtful those releases are. And it's just, there's got to be something in the system that's giving. And there's got to be some population that's being returned to the community to make room for these forensic restoration beds. And I don't know how or who's tracking that, but I think we should just be watching for people being returned out of those civil beds and how well they're being set up for success when they're released there. Thanks.
Thank you. And Judge Freeman?
I would just second that, what Maya mentioned, because obviously the improvement is coming from other beds, and that is the civil side, is my understanding. So, and that's the side that we do not see as much of. So
until they are dropped in the community with no supportive services and a new crime occurs.
Exactly.
So thanks, Your Honor.
Perry,
Thank
while
you.
we're on the subject real quick, and this is near and dear to the group that you're leading, could you explain, and maybe this is just muddled in my brain, when we're talking about people released on civil, is that what you had addressed several Fridays back in 2023 as a civil flip? And if not, could you explain the relationship between those two so we can understand? Because yeah, you don't want a good piece of news to indicate that there's really trouble on the horizon or an unsupported person in the future. But I'm just trying to connect those dots and make sure that it's sure my own understanding here.
I'm sorry, Mike, were you speaking to me? My volume was turned down.
I was, yeah. I was wondering about if what they were talking about when folks are released for civil reasons. If that's what the group that you were leading, a competency restoration group a couple weeks ago or a couple meetings ago, was talking about civil flips and making room for forensic restoration by essentially exiting people from those institutions. Is that
Right.
the same
And,
concept?
you know, with her permission, I think that Ms. Vanyo may be able to give a better,
That'd be
just
perfect.
overview description, if you will, Maya Lisa. I
sure.
don't know that I have all the components of that.
Yeah, so those are generally civil flips. So if someone has gone through part of the restoration process, it's found that they're not restorable within a reasonable period of time, or there's a variety of ways that someone can get civilly flipped, but it means that the criminal case is dismissed without prejudice, could be refiled, and they're sent into the civil commitment process. And depending on the nature of, if there's a serious violent type felony, then the statute may require that the hospital hold them for a period, a tough time. But if it's not a violent offense, or if there isn't history of violence then they aren't necessarily held at all, or maybe only held for a very short period of time. And so I think that there was a generosity with holding people under civil commitments, because they felt these people still needed to be in a hospital situation. But because of like one of the effects of the True Blood lawsuit is that they're prioritizing the criminal beds and have been told they can't prioritize the civil beds. So those folks are being sent back out. Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification.
Anyone else? This topic. All right. Jill.
Thanks, Jack. I just wanted to say right quick, can you hear me? Yeah. I just wanted to say a quick thank you to you and to Stephen for your 8 years of service on the task force and your leadership. You guys have made my job infinitely easier, and I really appreciate the hundreds and hundreds of hours that you volunteered with us. So thank you.
Jill, you're the best. I thought I would call on Stephen. Then I'll call on you, Barry, unless you want to go right now. I was looking through the original task force meeting of September of 2015, and Tyler, you're there as I loved your title. They must have scrambled to find this Executive Special Projects Manager is what you were officially then. And Dan Hamill was there, and Stephen it's the four of us are the only ones from that time, and that's as it should be. This should evolve. We should have rotation. We should see different people. But yeah, it is kind of the end of so Tyler, you and Dan will be the last two standing in different titles. But Barry, go ahead, and I'm going to call on Stephen.
I just wanted to echo what Tyler said and thank you guys for all your work, all the work you've done, not only in the task force, but with the stakeholder advisory committee and the implementation team. It's just been such a pleasure to work with both of you. So we're not done with you. I guarantee you that. So thanks again.
And Mike, please pass on my thanks as well to Greg.
I will do so. Yeah, he's always pulled in so many directions. This is Greg Winter's last day. And just from my own standpoint, from somebody who's sitting and working with folks that have been in the same position for 8 years, that might make people worried in the public about well, what do they do with new ideas? And I can tell you from working with everybody on this folk, but especially our two chairs, adopted new ideas, championed. There was no moss growing ever on the feet. And just thank you both for that and for constantly bringing energy, even when things look bleak. So just really appreciate both of you, your leadership. You'll be sorely missed.
Stephen?
Thank you all for those expressions of appreciation. To me, this has been 8 years of really, really core critical work on behalf of the community. it's been a pleasure to rub shoulders with really dedicated, competent public employees and community representatives. I think this is an extraordinarily unusual, high-powered group, and I've been honored to be part of it. I remember one of the other original members, the Peace Health Representative, Chris Phillips, who identified this as really the exemplar of a public community collaboration. And I think we've gotten feedback from outside that that is the case. So I just hope our work these past few years lays a good base for moving forward. I know we're in competent hands, and I think we have a good start, and I'm sorry to emphasize the start of that, but we're really starting a new phase of this, which has taken a lot of work to get to, but I find very promising. So good luck to all of you. It's really been nice to meet monthly with you. Jack?
Thanks, David. Yeah, I was just thinking, now I didn't enjoy COVID, but I sort of liked the year off. It wasn't all horrible not having so many meetings, but the many meetings they got a lot accomplished, which this group did. I appreciate it. I think, I was, my dad died 8 years ago. No, 9 years ago, a couple days ago. He taught at Western, social study, secondary ed. But I remember a letter he wrote me when I was in Shelton. I served 10 months for my first forgery, which is a 0 to 30-day offense now, but it was a different time. And I told the judge I would rather go to prison than treatment, and he obliged. And when I wrote him a letter afterwards saying I changed my mind, he didn't write back. So I was there. And my dad wrote me that he hoped that someday those experiences would have some positive use. And with, more than 3 decades of recovery and a different life, I think for me, it's been important to be that voice. I mean, I've got some planning abilities and facilitation ability, but my heart in it is I really believe many of the people, I would say 2/3 of the people I was in jail and prison with are just dumbass, or I'm not supposed to swear in this. They're just people that make mistakes that really aren't bad people. There was a small percentage of people that I think were dangerous that needed to be locked up. That was my anecdotal experience, but the vast majority were not. And I think it's important. I hope the task force finds someone with authentic lived experience to be that voice. And it's really significant to me that you all allowed me to co-chair this thing, given the interesting background that doesn't always lend itself to that. And I appreciate that very much. In that sense, it's kind of a full circle thing. So maybe that's what justice is about. So good luck with everything. I plan to volunteer for the finance thing. I hope it meets no more than quarterly. Maybe early on a little more. But it's really been a true privilege to be part of the community I grew up in, having wreaked a little havoc on it and hopefully long-term done more good than harm. I think that's probably true in my case at this point. And yeah, it's been a pleasure. Jill, you're amazing. You make all of us look good. And Barry, thank you for you and Todd before you, and Tyler and Sat Paul. The coordination's been phenomenal. So, and all of you given all the hours. So that's it for me. I go on way too long. I like to speak, so I'll shut up. So you guys can all get back to your jobs. And I've got an ocean to go look at. It's 80 degrees. And I got my boyfriend cut mango for me that I need to finish. So I've got an itinerary today. And I think, Jill, public comment.
Yeah, it's right quick. Barry, if you don't mind staying after, I've got a few quick questions for you. And public comment, if any of you would like to speak to the task force, please virtually raise your hand now by selecting the raise hand icon. We have a couple of hands raised. Jason, go ahead and speak to the task force.
Hi, Jason DeForest, local business owner. That's a really tough one to follow up, Jack. I don't even know if I want to give a speech after that because that was so powerful. I really appreciate both what you and Stephen have done. If I could just continue into what I do have to say about what was said today and my overall message. Paul, I can assure you what's going on at that jail is much worse than blah, blah, blah. Your empathy and concern for your constituents would be appreciated. I know I voted for you, and after that comment, I would take that back. Tank, accredited facilities. I think ICE facilities are a good example of this in how they run and maintain their facilities at a high level. Oversight and accountability at our jail should be about rehabilitation and reintegration. It is the court's responsibility to punish. It is the jail's responsibility to rehabilitate members of the community and help them reintegrate into the community, be successful, and not reoffend. This isn't rocket science. They're doing it all over Europe and producing a much higher rate of non-reoffenders. There are jails like this already being planned in California. The CIA's unofficial motto is, "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." That's John 8:32. In line with that, the best way to prevent and reduce reincarceration is with police, healthcare worker, and public servant oversight and accountability. Until we have safeguards in place to protect citizens from bias, stigma, prejudice, discrimination, and injustice, the police and the courts will continue to assert misinformation, false narratives, and legally limiting charges that don't actually have to be validated or accounted for. Furthermore, there are no enforced ramifications for these types of injustices, which overload our legal system. Just for the record, FDR don't have shit on me, and I'm more in line with MLK Jr. Thank you.
Councilmember Lillquist, if you'd like to speak to the task force, go ahead.
Hopefully you can hear me. I just want to be very brief and extend my heartfelt thanks to both Stephen and Jack for your years of service. Really, really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the task force? Please virtually raise your hand now. I don't see any hands raised, and I believe our council conference room is empty. Thank you.
All right, Stephen, you can close it.
Okay, thank you, Jack. On that note, we are adjourned for January, and most of you will see each other in February. Take care, everybody.